Welcome to Deep Thought. People have to stop trying to force their philosophies on others. One of the things I've done with this channel is, despite everything I might discuss philosophically, if y'all notice, I never promote a spiritual path. At best, I'll show respect to a particular spiritual path or religious path, or even a philosophical path, as something like atheism is not necessarily a spiritual path, but it is a philosophical path, but I've shown respect for that, right? Because part of my belief system is you cannot tell somebody or force somebody to follow your path. And this actually goes beyond religion. I'll use an example. MGTOW, that's a big term in this sector of YouTube. And I've had quite a few men tried to convince me I needed to follow the path. One even told me. He said, I said a few things. He said, well, that's MGTOW. And yeah, you're a MGTOW. I was like, no, I'm not. I follow what I follow because I follow it. All right? And it's kind of an annoying thing when people try to force their view on you or what you have to do. Or, they'll say, well, you need to be following this. And if you don't follow this, you're in trouble. You're not going to make it, even though they're not making it. And it's just like, look, let me tell you what, I never discuss my particular spiritual beliefs. I never do, because I don't want, I realize that people will follow what I say and everything. I don't, because, first of all, my spiritual beliefs aren't imperialistic. And what I mean by imperialistic, if you look at many spiritual traditions around the world, they believe in proselytizing. And that's basically meaning going out and preaching it and saying, hey, you need to do this. But first of all, that's an idea born out of chauvinism, which saying my path is better than yours. Particularly when at the end of the day, you really don't know. You can have faith that is better than someone else's, and you could say it's better for you, especially if you've done some study, but that's all you can say. Everyone is at a different place in their spiritual evolution. Some people might need a lot of direction, and some others won't, but there's that choice. And then at the end of the day, it's still a person's choice, even if they are part of a particular system, how they want to interact with a supreme being, or if they don't want to interact and they feel like, hey, we just a bunch of atoms. And that's it. But they have that respect. And I've actually been very good friends with, I'm a spiritual person. And if anybody, if you ask me directly, unless you say something in a certain way, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to be like, nah, that's my private thing. But I leave clues, especially if you just look at the picture I have of where I am at. And a lot of people will recognize it. And ironically, it's not the Giyanyami symbol. So it's right there. It's right there in the picture. It's funny, people ask about one. I say one. They ask about the Giyanyami and recognize it, but they don't ask what the other one is. That's the clue. So anyway, right? And some people who recognize the other one, they say, oh, okay, we see where you at, Rom. And that's cool. And that's me. But you notice I never force it, because that's the one thing. I've never said, hey, this is what you need to follow. Like I said, that's chauvinistic. That's imperialistic. To feel like you figured out something and the other one hasn't. Like a question, I remember I was on a message board. It was blackvoices.com, and there was a lot of back and forth in the spirituality and religion section. That was, I think I see spamming now and trolling now. That was crazy. People were threatening each other. That was crazy. Over what? A philosophy that ultimately we don't understand? In fact, that's where I got the Great Pumpkin reference, because one dude on there said, hey, if you worship the Great Pumpkin, you're a good person. We good with it. Because you had some people who were open about it. It were like, hey, as long as you respect others. And then you got some people, they trying to force something. They come in saying they going to force you. They going to force you. And it's like, well, wait a minute. You doing something that even your God doesn't do, which is try to force somebody into following. Because if your God, I don't care whether you use the term God, Allah, whatever, Shango, whatever, there's no text that says you should force somebody into anything. That's militaristic. And in fact, if you look at the history of at least the Abrahamic religions, and this is documented if you do the research, what happened was they became under the control of militaries, and they used it as a tool of conquest. So, but and like I said, it goes beyond religion. Like I used the MGTOW example. You have a lot of people trying to force that, or people trying to force, they arguing if you disagree with the Pookie and Ray Ray thing, that's becoming a philosophy. In fact, I might do something on that. It's becoming a philosophy. And if you don't agree with it, boom. Any philosophy, it could be, it could be whether you cut your grass or not. Some people have a thing and they say, oh, if you don't do this, it's like people try to have their own reality, but they trying to force everybody into what they believe. And it's just, it's pretty much, my thing is, it's pretty much ultimately you have to leave it. Now, you can bring somebody into your stuff, but the only way to do that is you live righteously, you shine a light, and then if a person comes to you and have questions, right, take out the word should, say, look, this is how I live. Because if you truly following, and this is getting for the people who are not as spiritual, just bear with me. But my thing is, if you truly following whatever your religious precepts are, if you truly following that, if you truly following being a good Christian, a good Muslim, a good Hebrew Israelite, a good Ifa devotee, right? A good Kemetic, whatever, good Buddhist, Confucian, Shinto, whatever. If you follow that, you don't have to tell anybody. You don't have to force it down. You don't have to try to browbeat them or shame them. If you have a clean glass of water, as was espoused in, I don't remember if that was in the actual autobiography of Malcolm X, but it was in the Malcolm X movie by Spike Lee in '92. And the character playing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad actually said, look, if you have a clean glass of water and a dirty glass of water, people will always go to the clean glass of water. And I've actually told that to people of different spiritual systems. If you following something, right, and you adhering to something, if you live what you're supposed to live, and that's a belief of mine, I don't force it, but if you live what you're supposed to live, you don't have to ask anybody, right? You don't have to force it. You don't have to say, hey, you should live this way. They're going to look at you and look at the quality of your life and ask you about it. And if it resonates with them, because they might ask you about it, be curious, but it don't resonate with them. It doesn't resonate with them. And, if it don't resonate, it don't resonate. Because as I said, now this is my belief. My belief is whenever you're needed, if, whatever deity you follow or whatever philosophy you got is truly righteous, people going to come to it on their own accord. They're going to see it. They're going to be drawn to the clean glass of water. So, but at the end of the day, you can't force anybody. You can't make anybody. That's imperialistic. That's arrogance, especially if your own life cannot reflect what you're trying to preach. People need to see that. And because people, at the end of the day, people want to see, how is this working for you? Right? How is this working for you? So you got to stop. Like I say, if you notice, I don't force anything. I just put it out there. This channel is called Deep Thought. And if I wanted to put out a specific path, I'll say, hey, this is what you need to do. And I ain't going to lie. Yeah, I've been that way in the past. I've been that way. But, as I talked about on, from my podcast from yesterday, learning from the past, I learned that doesn't work. That doesn't work. And so I was just like, you know what? I'm not even in really even being shining a light. because every path doesn't require that you convert people, so you don't need to advertise it. Now, if somebody who I thought could handle it, I'd be like, oh, okay, we'll talk about it. But isn't that from... And see, that's the thing, too. Sometimes if you talk about it, you get the people with the imperialistic thing. They're just trying to understand it to attack it. So we don't go there. So it's like if they really have questions, sincere questions, then it's like, okay. But then, you got to use some discernment to say, okay, what's their motivation for finding out? So anyway, that's all I have for today. Something to think about. Peace and blessings.